So it is my great pleasure to introduce Denise Greene Wilkinson.
All right, and I do have door prizes as well. A complete collection of Sarah Palin shoes are in the back. Just be sure to drop your card. Well, thank you, and good afternoon. On behalf of the National Association of Secondary School Principals in the great state of Alaska, it's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to thank the conference sponsors. Vinny, thank you for making me feel so welcome here, and for my colleagues that spoke before me. Yes, I am from Alaska, and no, I cannot see Russia from my front house. However, I am a principal of a K-12 school, and if you can imagine a school that originally was a retrofitted movie theater, we went and we cleared the swamp and made a playground. Then we took that herd of moose and ran them off and built a high school parking lot. And now we have 13 grade levels that reside under one roof. And it's a school that flourishes. I mean, we have kids who have graduated, and they're doctors, and they're lawyers, and they're engineers, and theologians, and artists, and educators. And they take this education forward with them. But what they really take is the Polarian philosophy that treating each person with respect and dignity is the ultimate call. And I'm also the president-elect of the National Association of Secondary School Principals. And as Vinny said, we represent over 30,000 secondary principals, 23,000 chapters of the National Honor Society, and about 10,000 chapters of the student councils. And one of the things as a national association, we obviously believe that having a safe and secure learning environment is vital to the educational success of all our students. You know, when students face harassment or bullying based on actual perceived sexual orientation or gender identity, it threatens both their safety and their ability to gain a quality education. And you know what? It's just plain wrong. Discrimination in the form of harassment, bullying, and intimidation, it leads to absenteeism, disengagement, and academic underachievement. And NASSP is committed to supporting a safer learning environment free of discrimination and violence. And one of the things we do as a national organization is we put a lot of capital into legislation into Washington, D.C. We currently sponsored House Bill 4223, which is requiring districts to provide professional development to principals, teachers, and paraprofessionals who implement and assess social and learning programs in their schools. We're a member of the National Safe School Partnership, and NASSP has also supported the passage of the Safe Schools Improvement Act. This is a great piece of legislation. This would include prohibition on bullying and harassment and require this to be part of all schools' conduct policies. It would also focus on effective preventive strategies and include bullying and harassment in the reports on school climate. But here's the one I'm most excited about right now. We've come out in support. It's called House Bill 998, also known, write this down, Senate Bill 555. No, I'm not running for political office with a number that rhymes, but this is Senate Bill 555. It's called the Student Non-Discrimination Act. Federal law guarantees a student's right to be free from discrimination based on race, gender, religion, disability, and national origin, but no such protection is extended to students based on actual or perceived sexual orientation or gender identity. The Student Non-Discrimination Act would provide a comprehensive federal prohibition against this type of discrimination and harassment in all public elementary and secondary schools across the country. Ladies and gentlemen, this bill is important, this bill is necessary, and this bill is long overdue. The Student Non-Discrimination Act presently has 150 co-sponsors in the House, which quite frankly, that's remarkable, given the bipartisan atmosphere in the House right now. We also have 34 co-sponsors in the Senate, And 2 months ago, NESSP partnered in a Letter a Day campaign in which organizations sent a support letter to all the remaining senators to ask them to sign on to this bill. I would ask each one of you in this room, find out where your senators and representatives stand on this particular bill and encourage them to support their students in their public schools. We can save a life. Now, I know that some of you here are principals as well. And, actually, that's our calling, is to maintain a safe school environment. In Alaska, if a moose wanders onto the campus, okay, that's considered an outside threat. But quite frankly, what I find is that most threats begin within the school. That's your greatest threat. And it's the principal's responsibility to set the tone in his or her school. I mean, this morning, Vinny's personal story about his middle school principal, shame on that person. I mentioned earlier at my school, at Polaris K-12, we maintain our Polarian philosophy of treating kids with dignity and respect. And I also believe that having that presence of elementary students with the secondary students puts a great deal of pressure on the secondary kids. But that belief has become a foundational principle in our school. It's because this philosophy has become their philosophy. The kids own it, and they maintain it. But you can't expect kids to get there on their own. You, as the principal or the teacher or the counselor, you have to set the tone in your building. And what can you do as an educator? Oh my gosh, this conference is phenomenal with the amount of tools that you're getting to take back to your schools. In our high schools, we do something and we call them listening sessions. And we start at the beginning of the school year, and with the staff and the students, we simply talk about the perceptions, what we perceive happening in our school. And we talk about school climate, peer-to-peer relationships, and then based on that, first of all, we find areas to celebrate within our schools. But secondly, we find areas in which to focus attention and action on. And what these listening sessions do is they give students a voice in a school. And that has been a result of not only increased behavior, but increased academic achievement as well. You know why? Because students are part of something greater than themselves. They're part of the community. And our middle schools, talk about an area in which kids are developing and becoming who they are. They're developing their lifelong attitudes right then and there at that particular point in time. So sexual harassment and bullying in middle schools is probably one of the most critical points in a kid's educational history that we need to target. Reduction in sexual harassment is improved when you use both classroom-based and building-wide interventions. Lily spoke this morning of a program. She talked about AVB, aggressors, victims, and bystanders. That is probably one of the most important programs in middle schools across this country right now. You add classroom lessons with these kids. You give them an understanding of what the law is. Then you talk about what harm is caused by this behavior. And then the most important thing with young kids like this is you give them the tools and training as to know what to do with it. They're not the aggressor. They're not the victim, but they're certainly the bystander. What do they do with that? And you give them also the vocabulary to talk about it. And I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, these initiatives do begin at the principal's desk. And students need to know that at any level, that harassment will not be tolerated. And students need to know that if they're a victim of harassment, they have a safe place to go. Again, this conference you have proven strategies here, both today and tomorrow, for reducing harassment and bullying and violence in schools, as well as addressing our victimized students and giving them safety, shelter, and support. I ask all of you, when you leave this conference, please find a program that works within your school. Engage your staff, engage your parents, engage your students. Whatever position you have in your building, bring something back and get it underway. no, I'll tell you what, it might not be very popular, but quite frankly, I don't think leadership really is very popular more often than not. So, in fact, I'll give you one of our stories. About 15 years ago, at one of our local high schools, we decided we'd have our first flag club. And it was so controversial that we had to have an assistant principal, a counselor, and a teacher be the co-sponsor of this club. And the backlash was so great from the community that the school board said, all right, we're just going to disband clubs rather than allow this club to take place at Diamond High. Well, of course, that didn't happen. Years later, the club is alive and well, and it also was established at every single high school in the district. And I talked to the principal at the original school, and she said, you know, year by year, club membership varies, but kids come back after graduation, and they said, you know, even if I didn't go to the club, I knew I had a safe place to go if I needed it. And those safe signs in the window, I knew that at my school that I had a place to go. This was part of my school community. And that's so important for kids. And to have kids come back and tell you that, you know that you're doing a good and worthy work. The other thing you have at this conference, which I found phenomenal, is you have an elementary strand. And you know, I'm the president of a secondary association, but silly me if I don't realize that this is a 13 grade level endeavor that we're in. And you actually begin to nip bullying in the bud with the little people when you work with the elementary kids. We have a program called Creating Successful Futures. And it's for our youngest kids who need to go and get special assistance dealing with their anger and curb their aggressive behaviors. And I had a little guy, first grader, and let's just say he was making a lot of bad choices. And he went off to Creating Successful Futures, came back, walked into the office, and he said, I'm back. And we said, hey, David, it's good to have you back here. And he said, you know what I learned? I said, what? He said, I learned how to be nice. I mean, it's so simple, being nice, and yet it's so hard. You know, Rachel Scott was one of the students that was gunned down in Columbine. And it was discovered later on that she was one of the leaders in a movement to embrace diversity on campus. Rachel's challenge now exists to teach students how to embrace and respect individual differences, to appreciate the value and worth of every person, to stand up for others who are being mistreated, be kind and compassionate to people, and reach out and help others. Let me encourage each of you today to echo in your school and your communities that pledge of Rachel's challenge. And thank you. Thank you for your passion and your courage. This has been a conference not just of information, but a conference of inspiration. Thanks so much, everybody.